What is up, my nerds? Welcome back to another episode of Roll4NerdyCheck. We got Zach and me. Zach, what is going on, buddy?
Not too much, the usual nerdy life, living it, dreaming it.
Me too, buddy. Me too. I've been watching a little bit more anime and stuff in my downtime. Been trying to power through some One Punch Man.
Yeah.
It was one of the animes that I hadn't watched for a while, so I kind of want to jump back into it. And it's that type of anime where it's heroes, but it's like funny.
Yeah, it's definitely like tongue-in-cheek playoff traditional anime. How far are you? Because I've finished season 2. I think there's either season 3 coming. I don't know.
I think I'm on like mid season 1 right
now.
Okay.
It's fun. The thing is, they make fun of these fight scenes by making over-exaggerated fight scenes. But at the same time, I end up being like, this is a good fight scene.
Yeah, and what's crazy, okay, so you have your My Hero Academias, you got your other things that are like, they take it, not like serious, they kind of want you to feel things a little bit, but with, at least with my One Punch Man right now, Saitama is like, so like, he's so OP. Mm-hmm. He's so OP that he's so goofy with it that it just makes it humorous.
Have you gotten to the secret of his power yet?
Where he does 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups.
He's like, I will allow you to know the secret of my power. And they're like, great. And he's like, do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 3 miles of jogging every day and commit to it. And they're like, that's it?
He's like super OP. And
he's like the definition of privilege.
People.
He just has this extra super strong power, and it's like, he's just like, you just gotta do some push-ups and sit-ups, man.
Yeah, even like Next Genus is like, who is a android, and he's like, what?
He's like,
okay. Nah. Yeah, he's like, okay, but I'm really loving the show. I never jumped on it right away, which I'm kind of sad I didn't, but oh well, I get to enjoy it now. But I love the show. It's so funny, very humorous type of style, but also kind of gives you a nice heroic thing. So right now I'm on the episode where he's about to fight the Sea King, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the like giant fish guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's a good one. It's gonna be interesting. It's great because it develops into its own, like it's an actual anime, but it's also an anime making fun of anime. But then it also just like it continues the beats of those animes as they evolve, and it evolves with it. But it continues to be tongue in cheek about the fact that the like silent assassin guy who's like, I am the fastest and you are my rival and blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
He like continues to pop up throughout the series, and he's like, you will not defeat me this time. And of course, he's always defeated. It's the typical Naruto Sasuke. I mean, that could spark its own debate, but like, it's always the like main character, and then like character who's like really, really good. The Goku Vegeta, where it's like, of course I got to give Vegeta props, but also Goku's always right there. This much more.
He's right there, yeah. Which I feel bad for Vegeta because there were. Side note, because we're talking about anime, but I saw a video where it was saying like how Vegeta kind of gets hated on, or he kind of gets like nerfed in the show, and it was talking about like the styles of characters who we are as people, and it's like we all like want to be Goku, who like achieved like this, who is easy to achieve this certain thing, right? I wouldn't say Goku it's easy for him. He definitely trains hard.
Sure, but like he's always just that much better.
Yeah, where Vegeta, he works so hard. He drives himself to like where he thinks he's at the limit, but he like just goes beyond that. Which I can't even like compare. I don't even know how to like give an example of what it's like to do that. But
I feel like it's almost Batman versus Superman, because Superman has unlimited potential, and he just needs to keep pushing to keep getting that potential higher and higher and higher. It's Goku. Yeah. He even says in I think the Resurrection F movie / the Super series. I don't know if it was in both because they kind of meshed them together, pulled them out, and stretched them out for the show. But Goku even says like, I achieved Super Saiyan God through this like the thing that they did in the movie where like all the Saiyans came together. They did their like Super Saiyan God ritual. And then he says he was like, Vegeta learned it. He pushed through his own boundaries to get to Super Saiyan God just by watching me and seeing my power. He like pushed himself to get to that level without the ritual. Like it is definitely like Goku just has the potential, and Vegeta is the one who like builds the potential. And that's why we all kind of relate to Vegeta and empathize with Vegeta, because he's the one who's like, I may not be Goku strong, but I am this close every time. And sometimes I do get just a little bit above him, and then he shoots back up.
And then he shoots back up.
And he shoots back up, and he's like, but I'm keeping neck and neck with him, despite the fact that like he's just naturally, he's Michael Jordan out here of the Saiyan world.
Yeah, exactly.
And Vegeta's like, I'll just push myself until I'm his strong. And then he gets stronger, and Vegeta's like, God damn it!
Can you not move the bar, please? Can you please just
stop moving the flagpoles?
Yeah. So it was just interesting because I kind of relate where we always as humans we compare ourselves to other people. Like, I wish I had this physique. I wish I had this or that. And then I kind of relate to Vegeta a lot because I'm like, he is the epitome of what humanity is, where we always relate to someone else and we try to achieve what they have, but we may not get quite there, but it's okay.
It's interesting that I would argue that Vegeta is more human than Goku is, despite the fact that Goku's supposed to be like the best of us. He's supposed to be happy and friendly and treating people with kindness, but protecting the people you love and protecting the things you love with all of your strength, while also using all of your heart to love everyone around you. That's all very nice, very romantic, and a very good ideal version of humanity. Whereas I feel like Vegeta accurately represents humanity, where it's like, sometimes I make a deal with a bad guy so that I'm stronger, and I have to kill people to do it. It's like, I'm not saying that we're all out here like murdering people, but I am saying that there are a lot of people on this planet who will make sacrifices that they don't like to go forward in life.
And to boost Vegeta up even more, though, I'm a big Goku fan. Gohan is my favorite. He is my favorite character. But nothing to Goku, but Vegeta's the better father, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
He's hard on Trunks. He's very hard on Trunks because he can see potential in Trunks and wants him to be the best. But he also Vegeta's at least there for his kids.
Vegeta is a much better father. Piccolo is a better father than fucking Goku.
I was going to say. Like, it's why Piccolo's the surrogate father of Gohan.
It's just like, okay, so let's map this out time-wise. Goku was father to Gohan for the first 5 years, and then the Saiyan saga happened, and then he died, and then he was dead for a while, and then he came back around the Namekian saga, and then didn't die, but technically we thought he was dead, and it turns out he had just gone to another planet for like another sum of years. Comes back around the Frieza saga, the like return of the Trunks Frieza saga.
Oh yeah.
Because so that was
Android, right?
Right. No. That was pre-androids. Trunks shows up to warn them about the androids. That's when Goku comes back. Then he trains with Gohan for a few years for the androids to come. And then he subsequently dies at the end of the... So he trains with him in the like hyperbolic time chamber for a year. So even though it's a day, very Goku, just squeeze in a year's worth of bonding in 24 hours.
How wild is that? Side note, how wild is that chamber, though?
The hyperbolic time chamber?
Living a year.
Yeah.
You're living a year somewhere.
I have so many questions, too. Like, their hair grows, so clearly they're aging in there. Is it just like a pocket dimension where time moves faster, or are they not actually aging, and it's just that happening? Also, like, didn't they destroy it by the end of the series? They were like, this is too much of a like an OP buff for you guys to just be able to take a year.
I don't know. I guess they don't know.
At the end of the
actually,
Boo saga.
I think they do use it. I think they do use it still.
They try to trap Boo in the hyperbolic timetable room by destroying the like entrance to it, and then he yells really loud, and it creates like a rift in time and space.
I think they rebuilt it because in Super, I think Vegeta talked about how he went in there.
Okay,
for a little bit. Yeah,
it starts to get...
because Bulma was pissed at him. Bulma was pissed at him or something because she's like, "You're always elf training and like." For a while, like days at end on the hyperbolic time chamber or something like that. I might be misremembering, but I remember him doing it.
I also like how Saiyans, they just made it so that Saiyans don't age in Dragon Ball Super. They were like, at one point they make a joke about like how the wives are getting middle aged, and then Bulma's like, of course you Saiyans don't have a problem with that. You don't age at all. And they were like, yeah, it's part of being a Saiyan.
Yeah, which is weird because I'm like, okay.
Like it's
so
just their way of being like, we'll keep them forever. I'm like, are they just immortals at this point? Like,
yeah, that's like, I was confused. I'm like, you're just another type of humanoid from a different planet. Like, what gives you?
Or
like,
are they?
Right.
Okay, so they've now given Super Saiyan has obviously got Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Super God, Super God. They've now given in like the movie the like a Super Saiyan Namekian version, basically a Super Namekian, I think is what it's like an extra form that Piccolo was able to learn. I need there to be a superhuman. I just need there to be, other than androids, which doesn't count, I need there to be like an unlocked potential for humans to get to.
Which I feel like they could be, especially with Supreme Kai. Well, I think that when they were on Namek, couldn't they essentially, since Krillin has been training so hard and he's kind of like at the peak of human ability, couldn't he redo like his ultimate potential again, since his potential has increased?
Yeah, they did unlock his ultimate potential, although if Krillin is the peak of humanity, like, don't get me wrong, Krillin's fine. I think Krillin gets extra hated on. He does, because his best friends are Super Saiyans and gods and Friezas and shit like that. Like, yeah, he runs with a tough crowd. I would love to see him unlock, I would love to see Krillin specifically unlock some like super form. But then again, they also, I don't know, Gohan's got like his beast mode. I don't know. I feel like they could just give him some kind of like special transformation. It doesn't have,
because
like,
go ahead. You know how Gohan had before he even had Beast, he had Ultimate, right? He wasn't even a Saiyan. I mean, he wasn't even Super Saiyan. He was just like peak Ultimate form, where he just
I hated that form. I know you're a big Gohan fan. I hate that form because it doesn't do anything. It's just white energy floating around him. Whereas like Saiyans are turning, their hair's turning gold and their eyes are turning blue, and like there's this like big energy transformation. And then Gohan's like, watch my big transformation. It's the same. And like nothing changed about him.
I also saw it as maybe like premature like Ultra Instinct power.
It could have been, and I'm not against that. I just think that, like, okay, so visually, I think that there needs to be a difference, because when he powers up as a non-Super Saiyan, he gets white energy around him, and his hair is already Super Saiyan-ish. It's already pointy. So then when he's like, now it's time for my ultimate form. And people are like, okay. And he's like, this is it. And they're like, it looks a lot like your form 2 seconds ago. And he goes, yes, but now my power has skyrocketed. And it's like, but it hasn't changed. And he's like, it's there. You can't see it, but it's extra strong. I just want a little visual dynamic. Make his hair like silver, or make it white, pure white, instead of the Ultra Instinct silver, or make his energy level around him like purple or something. Do something to visually distinguish this special form, because like,
and I think that's why they did Beast white.
Yeah, I think that Beast is a good mode. They just made his hair go, which is a lot of Super Saiyan. Let's be honest. No, I'm more okay with that. It was that like. It was that like Boo saga. Oh, I've found a different path, and it's like, that's cool and all, but like it just it felt very like he was like, I found a different path, and I'm like, are you sure that path isn't nothing? And like, I know that they described it. It's just, look, cards on the table. I am a nerd. Nerds like shiny lights, different colors, big stuff. So if you give me like, this is a new form and nothing about it has changed, like, you can describe it all you want, because like Goku and Vegeta and them would be like, oh my god, your power level has skyrocketed in this new form. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't see it being different. That's why there's like a billion different forms, because like visually the audience wants to see change.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and you're right. But my favorite form, honestly, is Gohan Super Saiyan 2. Is my favorite form. So
mine
far.
is Super Saiyan 3.
Is it?
And it gets scooted over so often because like Super Saiyan 3 happened during the Buu saga, and then they immediately went into Super Saiyan God, and it wasn't like a tier system where it was like, oh, if you go to Super Saiyan 3, that's why so many people I think like Super Saiyan 4 from GT, even though it's not canon at this point, because it doesn't go Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God. It goes Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3 are in its own like Super Saiyan tier, and then there's Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue for the sake of easy. And then they haven't gone past that other than Ultra Instinct, which is almost it's like Super Saiyans are here, Super Saiyan Gods are here, and then Ultra Instinct is here. But you don't have, you can go like this, like you don't have to go Super Saiyan God. In fact, I think they prefer if you don't to be Ultra Instinct.
Yeah, so like I think that's why, from what Weiss was saying, is like you don't need to go God form. Like he's like trying to get you beyond that point. It's
like your power is great, and if you can combine that with Ultra Instinct is like a mentality. It's like it's your body moving independently of your brain telling it to move. It's just your body just naturally fights, which is fine, but also like
different though, right?
His is
ego?
Ultra Ego. I don't know like how canon that is. Again, I've only watched the English dub, so I know that there's more beyond it. I do think it's funny. I saw a meme the other day that was like, so the end of the Dragon Ball Super Tournament of Power has Goku turning Ultra Instinct, and he fights, what's the guy's name? The big dude. Jiren. They were like, he's this like huge monster of like whatever. And I know he's technically a good guy, so they'll never. But like they could have made them more rivals. And then there was like they immediately went into the Broly movie after that. That was like And it was like, oh my god, even at Super Saiyan God, Gotenks like or like the merged form of them and all that. And it was like a meme that was like, sad Jiren is sad that he was going to be the biggest rival Goku's ever had before Broly came in 10 minutes later.
Yeah. Which is, yeah. We got sidetracked on that, but
we did get super sidetracked on that. That's what we do here, man. A little Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super lore for our listeners.
For our listeners, yeah. But, yeah, there's something. But talking about heroes, there's something I wanted to talk about, and I don't like to go talk about controversial stuff, but with it pertaining to hero stuff, I wanted to talk about the Johnathan Majors controversy that's surrounding him right now.
Yeah,
which is sad, and I hope it's not true. He was arrested in New York for a domestic violence charge. How do you feel about that, or what do you think so far?
It's tough. I think bias is on the table here because I think it's important when people say that as good as an actor as he has been in the MCU, and as pivotal as they have made him in the role. Also, the fact that he just dropped Creed 3, which I haven't seen yet, but I would really like to see soon. He seems in media and everything like that, which is certainly a controlled environment. He seemed very cool, very very fun. Someone who it seemed like someone who I would like to hang out with. And so all of those things are laying in bias. That is, I'm going to wait and see unless there is evidence that comes out or proof that comes out. Not that I don't believe the person who is accusing him of these things. If they really did happen, then I think he deserves to be stripped of all of those things. I think that what happens is when you have a preconceived notion of somebody based on the window that media allows you to see them in. If you like them, you are more likely to give them a window of like, let's see how this plays out. Which kind of sucks, because if it is true, then I am basically telling the person who is accusing him of these things and who may have been, I think it was something along the lines of like, was literally strangled or like...
Strangled, yeah.
Yeah, like...
well, let's just say this. Like, we're not saying that she's not right. We're not the experts. We are taking a step back, and we do not want to prejudge. At least me, I don't want to prejudge anything until I have facts first. I'm not saying she's wrong, nor am I saying she's right. I'm not the person who's doing the investigation. I wasn't there. I don't know. So I'm going to take my seat and take a step back and not prejudge anything. I'm not prejudging her, saying she's a liar. You know, I'm not saying that she's a liar, nor am I saying he didn't do it. I'm just saying I'm just going to sit in my seat and just see how it plays out. That's all we're doing.
It is too early for me to make a knee-jerk reaction, because when the stakes are high enough that it could cost somebody their entire career, and again, there is certainly, because I think being transparent about it is very important, and if anyone wants to start a discussion about this in the comments, we're more than welcome to go back and forth with them. This is, part of learning and growing is listening to other people. And in this case, it's listening to both sides, seeing how things play out. I don't want to be the kind of person who knee-jerk reacts before necessary, but I also don't want to be the person who tells somebody who went through something terrible, let me just wait and see how things play out. So it's a shitty situation, regardless of however it plays out. Right now, I'm just staying quiet. I am just going to do the best thing I can, which is sit back and listen, because I don't have all the facts right now, and so I don't want to speak either way. And because of my biases of everything that I've seen from him as an actor and from the limited interactions I've seen of him, that doesn't mean anything, but it just gives just enough time for me to say, okay, let me just see how this plays out. I'm just not going to be pro or con either way, which is, I think a good way to be when it's this early in, because if I condemn him and he's wrong, then I've condemned him for no reason. And if I condemn him and he's right, then great. But I would rather just sit back and be quiet.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's all I really wanted to say about the fact. It's one of the top things in the news right now, especially everywhere. So I at least wanted to get our 2 bits out. Say what we have to say, and then we can just move on.
Yep.
So we've said our piece. Talking about celebrities, though, I've noticed, because you and I play D&D, you're definitely a bigger D&D guy than me. I just got into it. You got me into it. But I've noticed there are some celebrities in Hollywood that I know that were big D&D people and play in groups a lot. But I'm starting to see more and more celebrities that are kind of jumping on this D&D wagon in a sense. And
I think there's a bunch of celebrities too, just to be fair, that I think have always been big D&D people, but because it wasn't as popular culturally, they just didn't bring it up as much.
Okay. And that's possible, and that is very true and possible. It seems just how kind of convenient that a lot of this. I guess I kind of hold things close to my chest when it comes to nerdy stuff, because I've always been a nerd, and how uncool it was, and now of it being the cool thing where everyone's watch anime or do this. I'm like, man, I've been doing this since I was a kid, and I got hated on for it.
Well, that's why it's popular these days, because our generation who despite it all, despite being told by, adults in the room, hey, that's really kid stuff. Adults don't do that. Put that down. You're not going to play video games when you're 30. You're not going to play Dungeons and Dragons when you're 40. Or if you are, you're this loser who stays in your mom's basement. And it's I'm in my own basement. Thank you very much. No, I think that's why culturally the things have pushed forward, because our generation was actually, you guys just didn't grow up with anime, or you guys may have done Dungeons and Dragons, because obviously Dungeons and Dragons is not new, but certainly I think it was kind of made fun of. And then I think what's the next Netflix show? I can't think of it off the top of my head. Man, people on the internet are gonna rip me up. What's the one where they play Dungeons and Dragons?
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. Thank you.
Yeah,
I have ADD, and sometimes my brain doesn't work good. Yeah, I think Stranger Things made it cool again, because they started playing it, and I've noticed that especially it's funny because Stranger Things, with all its 80s references, is the ideal show for anyone between I would say late 30s and early 50s, because it hits that 80s sweet spot really well. But I've also noticed that my sister's youngest sister, who's right now she's 18, but at the time she was I think 14.
Your sister's younger sister?
And I'm sorry, my wife's younger sister.
I was like, doesn't that make your sister too?
No, I don't consider her family. No, no, it's my wife's younger sister. And when she was, I mean, she was a big Stranger Things fan because it appeals to the younger genre for her horror purposes and storytelling purposes, and then it appeals to older people for the 80s references and all of that stuff. And so when they started playing D&D, I think this generation of like Gen Zers was like, oh, hey, this seems cool. And then, then you've already got the Matt Mercers, the Brennan Lee Mulligans, Dimension 20 and Critical Role. And like, it just started building and building and building. And it just kind of hit this perfect storm of like, now everybody's cool with D&D. Even if you don't play it, you're like, people are like, oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons. This was fine. Like, I think if you say D&D, you get away with it more. If you're like, I play Dungeons and Dragons, people are like, oh, good for you. Whereas if you're like, oh yeah, I play D&D.
Yeah, and I noticed too, like, I'm not even gonna front, like, before you let me into your campaigns and party, I was feeling weird about it. I'm not gonna lie, like, I was like, D&D, that's like super nerdy, man. I'm like, I don't know if I'm that nerdy.
Yeah.
And like I'll be honest, even with me watching, I watch Stranger Things and I find it a great show. Me watching Stranger Things and watching them play was like, man, maybe I'll give it a chance. And then conveniently you were like, hey man, I'm starting this campaign and we need another person.
Yeah.
I know it might not be your thing, but do you want to try it? And I was also in that mode where I told you, I was like, hey, it's a new year for me. I'm into trying new things now because I'm like, I can't just keep doing the same old stuff and be cool with it. So I was like, yeah, why not? And I fell in love with it. It was fun.
Yeah, honestly, there are two things that I always said were two nerdy lines that I wouldn't cross. It was too deep, which was Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft. Obviously, the Dungeons and Dragons things changed during COVID, or it was like right before COVID. A buddy of mine was like, hey, I know you've never played. I've been playing my whole life. Would you like to play? We started playing. That campaign fell apart after. It lasted a decent while because of COVID. I think we either got together sparingly or we would do it online. And it lasted probably 8 months, 9 months. But it fell apart after a little while, group dynamics, social dynamics, and everything like that. Then we started another campaign, which didn't last as long. That one lasted maybe 3 or 4 months, and it fell apart. And then I was like, hey, I like DMing, which is rare in the D&D world. I like storytelling. I like creative telling. I like world building. And so I was like, cool, I want to get this D&D's, I want to scratch the itch. And we kind of bobbled around. We did an unofficial Pokemon D&D for a little while. Group before you that I did, we did like an unofficial Harry Potter where it was like, I called it because I was DMing, I called it The Boy Who Died, because basically everything takes place similarly, but instead Harry dies at the beginning and then you replace his role in the series with the group. And it's like, cool, rather than being like tied to this prophecy against Voldemort, it was just like, hey, they were going to fill in that spot. That one lasted through year one. It was meant to go through all 7 years of Harry Potter. We made it through year one, and again, it kind of fell apart, as D&D groups do. So yeah, when I was like, okay, let me see if I can bring Shane in, because I know he's a nerdy guy, and I think he'll like it. Yeah, it was going great.
Yeah, and I was kind of apprehensive at first, but then you were kind of convinced me, like, hey man, just try it. And I was like, I talked to myself, I was like, okay, what's the worst what, there's nothing gonna happen, so who cares? I was like, yeah. So I tried it. I remember creating my character. You're like, and what's been great about our group, and I've noticed, is that like with me being like fresh off the bus of the D&D world, has been very welcoming, and like being able to be taught how to play.
Yeah, the
like
community
anytime we're
is
like
very welcoming.
Yeah. And every time like I'm in session and we're in session, I'm like, you're like, all right, roll for hit check or something, and I'm like, what? I'm like, Zach, which one do I roll? And you're like, oh yeah, you want to roll this one here. I'm like, oh, okay, roll a d20. I'm like, cool, gotcha.
That is,
and then
I will say, it is one of the most intimidating things is getting out there when you're playing with a group of people who already know how to play D&D for the most part. And it'll be like, cool, you're going to do a charisma check. And you're like, what do I do? But like that is justifiably, I think a lot of people's fear is like, it's a lot of knowledge. It's a lot of like you have to. I always say when I'm like prepping a D&D session, I'm like, oh, I got to do my nerd homework because I gotta. Not only do I have to creatively plan what's going to happen, I have to pick out the monsters. I have to see if I want to make any adjustments to their health, to their strength, to their moves. I have to know all of the things that you guys might come across. And as a DM, and this is a piece of advice for all my hair. I'm going to focus in on the camera. This is a piece of advice for all my D&D people out there, especially if you're a DM. If you're new to DMing, or even if you're not, and this might just help you. The rules, the books, the lore, because that's what overwhelmed me and why I stayed away from, whenever I would DM like a homebrew of like the Harry Potter, the Pokemon, just other side stuff. I was always intimidated by traditional D&D because I was like, I don't know this lore, and there's a lot of D&D lore. There's a lot of D&D monsters. There's a lot of D&D mechanics. There's a lot of that, and I was like, I have to know all of this stuff. So I started studying, I started reading through the books, and it was and is very difficult for me to hold that information. What set me free was knowing that those are all suggestions. Everything about your universe can be different than traditional D&D universe, even if it's almost exactly the same. If you start DMing and somebody says like, oh, well, traditionally this monster would have this much health. If someone tries to rules lawyer you back, you are above God in that game. You, as my friend likes to say, you control God in that game. So if a rule doesn't apply, or if you don't like it, or if you want to change it temporarily, or if you want to make a specialty creature, I'm sicking, I don't know, pick a monster, an owlbear at you. But it's like, okay, well, normally owlbears are this much health. And I want to say this is a mutated owlbear, so it's extra strong. All of the things in the books are there to help you and to guide you and suggest to you. They are not set in stone. Don't let people come in and say, well, that's not how traditional D&D works, or that's not how the rules work, or when I played in a previous campaign, they were only... It doesn't matter. It's your universe, and then your characters are driving the story forward. Everything else is just a suggestion to help you out. Cool.
Well said. Well said.
My PSA.
Yeah. And it always helps too, is like if you're playing with a close group of friends who, like, even if you are new to this, don't feel like... I definitely felt self-conscious, and you know what's crazy is that I've told you this many times. I've called you driving home from the session, or have talked to you through text, and like felt so weird. I was like, Zach, I feel like the uncool kid at the nerd table. I was like,
you're like too cool for the nerdy table and too nerdy for the cool table.
Yeah. So I was like, I always felt like, well, like when I first started out, because I didn't know the game, I didn't know like the mechanics or anything of how it was, and being told like, yeah, you want to roll the D20, or this is how you check your
modifier or your
modifiers and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then like when I'm driving home, I'm like, man, I hope all the other people, because like we're playing with experienced people, like like your other friend Zach, who's been playing for, I don't know, his whole life.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the majority of his life.
So like, and then a couple other friends who've been playing it for a while too. So like, I felt like the uncool kid again. I was like, man, I hope I'm not bumming everyone else out, like, because I'm like the guy who's like, hey, I have a question, and then all the other kids are like, god damn it, this guy again.
Yeah, like, there's always that fear of like, oh, I'm gonna slow down the gameplay, and it's like, it's really not that big a deal. Like, if you're like, how do I'll just tell you what to do, and then you roll it, and I give you your modifier. It's the people who suffer in silence who actually end up delaying the game longer, because if I'm like, hey, roll to do a charisma check, and you roll the dice, and then you're like, okay, which one? And I'm like, it's a D20, and you're like, okay, you roll, and then you're like, okay, 13. I know there's a modifier in here. And I'm like, what's your charisma score? And you're like, it's 13. And I'm like, okay, so your modifier I think is what, a +1 at that point, +2. I think it's 10 is nothing, 11, 12 is +1, 13 is +2, so it would be +2. But if you just say, okay, it's okay. So this is full talk. Shout out to Brene Brown, who does books and podcasts and everything on vulnerability and shame and vulnerability. It's stressful. It is really stressful to be like vulnerable and say, I don't know. I don't know is a really hard especially when it's like a game thing, and especially when it's like I've rolled 5 times this session, so I should know what I'm doing. And it's like, but if you don't, you don't, and like nobody's gonna shame you for it. But it feels super raw to be like, okay, what do I roll? And then you roll, and then you're like, okay, what is my modifier? And it's like, you're afraid somebody's going to be like, why don't you know this yet, Shane? Why haven't you studied your D&D? And it's like, nobody really cares. You'll just pick it up when you pick it up. And even if you never pick it up and people are constantly just helping you with what your modifier is, it slows things down by 2 seconds tops. So.
Yeah, and so with me joining your campaign and your group, definitely felt more welcome, because there's a board game shop up, like really like not even half a mile up the street from my house. It's pretty much a D&D shop. You know, their sign is a giant D20 on it.
I love that shop.
And yeah, even all the guys in there, like the owners, I've gone in there, and shout out to you guys. They're like, hey, we have D&D sessions every Wednesday. You can join in the campaign anytime you want. Just hop in. And I'm like, well, I'm not that experienced. He's like, it's all good. And he's like, we have people from beginner to expert. He's like, it doesn't matter, man. I was like, okay. So it's, as a community of nerds, it's nice not having that broiness.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
That, like gatekeeping, like,
yeah.
Oh, you don't know. If you don't know, I'm not gonna hold your hand. Like,
yeah. So it's kind of nice to have a community where like you are welcome, rather than like you have your bro anime guys who's like, oh yeah, I don't watch, okay, you watch Naruto and My Hero. That's like basic stuff. If you're not watching, I don't know, some random like ultra
pick some
underground
like very
Japanese
niche
anime, yeah, I'm like, okay, like cool.
I get people who tell me that all the time, and there's a confidence that just comes with being a 33-year-old nerd who's been told that you're too nerdy your entire life. Like, so like, yeah, it's I'll straight up throw it out there that I think I've said it on the podcast. I'm getting through One Piece for the first time. Mm-hmm. I took a big break with Hogwarts Legacy because I was like, every free moment of my life has to go to this game. But I started watching, started picking it up again, and I'm just watching it. And I've had so many people be like, well, have you watched XYZ? And I'm like, no, not yet, but I will. And they're like, then why are you binging through 900 episodes more of One Piece when you could knock out a bunch of animes that are, traditionally 12 to 24 episodes? And I'm like, I'm not against watching those. I'm not ruling those out in favor of One Piece. I'm just enjoying One Piece. Like, it doesn't have to be like I have, with my ADD and my brain and the way that I've like evolved over time, I've just learned that like, just enjoy things. If you are enjoying something else, if I'm watching One Piece and I start enjoying, I've never watched Trigun. If I started watching Trigun, I'm just going to let my brain go there. But if I, as an ADHD human being, try to force myself into something that I am less interested in than something else, I'll just get bored. And then I will resent it. So that is what happened with me originally with One Punch Man. Is I didn't know it was a tongue-in-cheek anime, and so many people were like, you gotta watch One Punch, you gotta watch One Punch. And I was like, I think I was watching something else or doing something else at the time, and I was like, okay, everyone won't shut up about One Punch being so great. And I started watching it, and because it wasn't what I was expecting, and because it felt tongue-in-cheek, like it was making fun of anime, which now I appreciate the humor in it, but I was so absorbed in, like, let's say, My Hero. I was so absorbed in My Hero that when I went to this other one that felt tongue-in-cheek, I was like, I'm not in the mood for a tongue-in-cheek right now. So I just let my brain go where it needs to go. And if God knows there are a ton of movies I've never seen that are, like, must-see movies. Same thing with anime. Like, I'm just going to get to see what I get to see, and I let my brain... If my brain is enjoying something, I'm not going to tell it no. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be but there could be something better.
I also never understood, like, why people put a timeline on it. Because, like, you and I are very good about this, where you're like, hey, man, I watched Haiku, and it's a really good sports anime. And I'm like, cool, I'll put it on my list, which it is on my Crunchyroll list.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just not on my next one to watch. So it's like, and I'll tell you like, hey man, watch JoJo's or watch, I don't know, Code Geass or Dr. Stone, which I started. Yeah. And it's like there is no timeline. There's always going to be a new anime. There's always going to be anime. So why do we have to put a timeline on it? If we're like, I'm not, God forbid, like I don't expect to die tomorrow, so I'm going to be able to watch these shows.
Right.
So like, why do I need to rush to watch, everyone tells me you got to watch One Piece. Even my cousin, who it's his top anime he loves.
Sure, yeah.
He's like, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. One Piece. I'm like, that's cool. Where you and I have a different aspect. Where you want to watch One Piece now. Me, I don't want to commit to a 1,000 episode genre right now,
which is totally fair. There's a reason I've never touched One Piece until now, and it's because I've said to myself, I have watched too many Shonen Jumps that are just so long. I mean, lifelong shows. If someone was like, go watch Naruto from the start to the finish again, I'd be like, no. No. I've seen it once. I experienced it once. It's in my head. There are people who will go back and watch it and enjoy it. God bless. That is your thing. That is not my thing. I love Naruto. I love Naruto. But it helped
took me a couple
that
of
I
years.
started watching it in high school. In like early high school, like 9th grade.
I'm not even gonna front. I just finished Naruto maybe last year. It took me a few years to finish it because I had finding a website that told me what was canon and what was filler, so that way I could skip the filler just to get to the meat of the show.
I said it to Chris in the wrestling. Chris is one of our D&D players in our group, and we were having this debate about like short form versus long form anime. And it's not that I don't like short form anime. I love short form anime, but I haven't done a long form anime in a while, which is why I picked up One Piece. And then he was like, well, why, you could have you could knock out so many 24 or 12 episode animes and have like a list of animes that you have seen that's this long rather than a list that's this long, but they're big boys. And I'm like, look, I have no problem with short form. I have no problem with long form. But right now, I am enjoying the long form storytelling that I don't think that you can get in short form. In One Piece, I am growing more attached to these characters and starting to feel that, like we were just talking about earlier in this episode, Goku versus Vegeta, and how we've seen Vegeta time and time again struggle to gain power and to keep up with Goku. Those are not stories that can be told in short form. That doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make short form storytelling bad, especially as somebody who does improv both short form and long form. I think that there are merits to anything that is short form versus long form. There are going to be pros that neither, there are going to be things that you can only do in a short form that you can't do in a long form, and vice versa. There are going to be things in a long form. There are going to be stories that can be told long term. There's progression. There's character arcs that you can get in long form that you just don't get in short form. That doesn't mean one or the other is bad. If cookies are on the table and brownies are on the table, if somebody comes up and goes, I can't believe you didn't eat any cookies, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just in the mood for a brownie, I'm not going to then be like, well, I should also, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean I'm not ever going to eat a cookie again. It just means that in this moment, I'm feeling a brownie.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said to you, like I'll always give you suggestions on animes that you should watch, and you're like, yeah, I'm just working through One Piece. I'm like, cool, just put it on your list, man, because I think you would enjoy it. Because you and I generally have the same type of
You and I
ideas
used to, when we worked together, you and I would go out to one of each other's cars, usually yours, and we would watch anime on like an iPad or a phone, and we would just like sit there and watch anime because like we have such similar.
We would grab our lunch.
Yeah.
We would grab our lunch, and we're like, hey, man, we got an hour. You want to go crank out an episode or two? And we're like, yeah. And we used to watch anime together.
We watched, it was like, Van Helsing was the first one we watched. Not Van Helsing. Balls. What's the one I'm thinking of?
It was Balls.
It was Balls. It was the one with Alucard.
Castlevania.
Castlevania. Yeah, not the. It's been a bad day for my mental memory today.
This Which is what happens. A great anime.
Great anime, absolutely. And it was great binging it with you. And that was perfect for short form, because I was like, cool, we can sneak in usually 2 episodes per lunch break, and then we would just for like a week we watched them, and then we were caught up, and then that was that. Like that was
I noticed too, like, I think for right now why I don't want to do long form, and this is just me, is because after I finished Naruto, and I've been watching it for so long, after it was done, I was like, I felt lost as an anime watcher. I was like, oh man, I just killed this juggernaut. Now what do I do?
Now what? Yeah.
So I was like, and the thought of me starting another juggernaut, like, okay, you beat this boss, now you gotta beat this boss. I'm like,
you spent a year and a half.
I don't have it in
this.
me. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I have it in me right now to do it. So right now, I'm just giving myself a break by just running through Dr. Stone, or running through One Punch Man, or catching up on My Hero.
Dude, that is exactly the point that I was gonna make, which is like, you know what is the equivalent of it? And this is why it doesn't work on me when people are like, well, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch that. It's not that I don't hear you, it's not that I don't add it to a list. I have like 4 lists in my phone of like animes to catch up on, long form animes. But like, how many times have people been like, you gotta watch insert show here, it's so amazing? And it's like, it's not that I don't doubt that it's amazing, and it's not that I don't doubt that you think it's amazing, because I'm not doubting its quality. But there's so much content out there right now that like, I just get to what I can get to, and if I stressed about every show that I wanted to watch that I don't watch, or every movie that I wanted to see that I didn't see, I would be stressed constantly. Ideally, if I took a month off my job and just binge watched every show, I still don't think I could catch up with it. I mean, people who want to watch, House of the Dragon, Ted Lasso. I would love to watch Ted Lasso. I plan on watching Ted Lasso. There's a show called First Wives that's about it's like this like story. It's acted, but it's about like the different things that the first ladies went through so it's like about George Bush's wife, Obama's wife, and there's one more I can't think of. But yeah, that was a show that came out like a while ago, and me and my wife watched the first episode. And we were like, this is amazing, but because it wasn't on a platform that we don't normally get, we had to like blah, blah, blah. There's a ton of shows that like, yes, I'm positive that these are wonderful pieces of media.
Yeah.
I just know I will get to what I get to. And if it's important enough, Ted Lasso, because I keep seeing things about Ted Lasso, slowly is moving up my list. So, like, yeah, the next time I feel like starting something new, which, by the way, is hard enough in itself, because sometimes I just don't feel like it. Sometimes I'm playing video games. Sometimes I'm reading books. I've told you how I come and go in cycles. My brain just will be like, for 3 months, you're going to want to do nothing but play video games. And then all of a sudden at the, and this isn't a specific number. My brain doesn't actually throw out a specific number. My brain goes, video games. And after 3 months, my brain goes, new TV. And it just has to switch into different things. So I watched One Piece for 150 episodes, and then Hogwarts Legacy came out, and my brain was like, that's all I want to do. Yeah. I have finished Hogwarts Legacy, and I have started a new character, which we've talked about, but like it's kind of a come and go thing where it's like if I'm in the mood, I jump into it and get some new side quests from a different house. But sometimes I for those who, I think we've talked about this, but for those who don't know, I'm a huge board game fan. So I have I have like 100 board games that I have that I can play. Some are 2 players, some are 3 to 4 players, some are 8 players. So me and Bryn will play board games a bunch. Sometimes we get in a phase. I just got there's a board game called Binding of Isaac that's based on an old video game that was a great game, and then they set up a Kickstarter for the expansion for it like a year and a half or 2 years ago. I kickstarted like the big boy, the like extra with all the cool fancy stuff. That just came on Friday. So I'm probably going to be in a board game phase for a little while. Like, I'll get to these things, but I would rather enjoy my life than feel obligated to do the things that people tell me I should do with my life.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's... Your and I brains are kind of the same. Because, like, I don't know if it's an ADD thing. or if it's just a normality thing. I don't know, because I don't know how other people's brains work. But my brain is the same. Because before we hopped on, you asked me if I finished Last of Us.
Yeah.
And I said no. And I feel bad about it because, like, yeah, it's something that I should finish because I started. But, like, my brain hasn't told me, hey, you want to watch Last of Us. Mm-hmm. My brain's like, hey, you want to watch One Punch Man.
Yeah.
Or you want to watch anime right now.
And you know what's funny is I used to phrase things like other people, and I would say, you gotta, bro, how have you not finished Last of Us yet, man? Like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then I started just, like, relating to myself and, like, what I would want the interaction if it was me to be. And so what I've changed my verbiage to be, or verbiage. I've changed my words so that when I say things, I can say, "Oh man, when you get to it, it's great." Because because I know it's great. You've watched it. Like, I don't have to convince you.
It's an amazing show. I love it.
It's just that your brain
it's
is
not in my mind right now.
Yeah, it's just not there right now. And so I'm not saying you got to get to it because it's amazing. I'm not saying you got to get to it because everyone else is going to leave you behind or spoilers are going to crop up. Like, all of those things. I don't have to remind you of those things. So all I say is when you get to it, you're going to really enjoy it. It is great. The finale sticks to the game. Everything is super well acted. If you haven't got to the episode with the guy who, like, is like a pastor or whatever, the, like, second to last episode, that episode, phenomenal, well acted. They do a tremendous job with it. You're gonna enjoy it when you get to it, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. That's why when we started doing the podcast, I think we talked about this. We had, like, a little sit down before we actually started doing the podcast to just kind of talk about what we wanted it to be, and we were like, we're two 30-plus-year-old dudes. Like, I'm 33. Yeah. You're what, 30? You're gonna be 30 in like
30 in 2 days.
Yeah, like a week or 2 days. So, like, we're those guys. Like, I'm this is not the podcast if you want immediate dropping breaking news. Yeah. We will do that. It's not that we're against that. But like, if you want, like, a week to week review, go hit IGN, go hit comicbook.com, go hit any of the news sites. Those are great. Those are great resources. We're here to I like to think that when we're talking, we are including all of our audience with us. Those who are listening right now to us are people who just kind of want that almost that, like, body doubling experience of, like, I just want somebody who can relate to me. And, like, look, it's cool when I go to, like, what is it, Screen Breakers or something like that on YouTube, who do, like, post episode Easter egg breakdowns and Screen Rant. And stuff like that. Those are great resources. I don't want to be that resource. I don't want to be the person who's breaking everything down. I want to be the person who's just generally talking about. I'm everything that, like, the internet, that, like, boomers hate about the internet, which is, like, just people talking about shit.
Yeah, and I always saw it as and as we were talking about it, and I always see it, and I imagine this. You're in a room full of your friends, talking about stuff that you all love, or someone has a point about and the other person might have a point of view about, and then it just goes on around the room just talking about certain things and goes off on tangents. That's how I imagine our podcast as. Yeah. And I hope everyone else who listens and enjoys it can appreciate that, is that we may talk about some latest and greatest things that are on the news, or we might talk about some old school stuff, but it's like how you're in the room together. Mm-hmm. I wanted to imagine, like, we're all in a room together, all of us that are listening, and you can relate, or we can jump in the conversation. Like, we could talk about Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, like, 5 episodes ago, and someone will comment, like, yeah, I thought about this point of view about Harry Potter, or this point of view of Lord of the Rings, and then they open the conversation because they're in the room with us, even if they're not in the room with us.
Right, absolutely. It is one of those things that it's just like, I just want to feel. It is a neurodivergent, an ADHD brain, or whatever you want to call it, a show for people who just want to slow down and enjoy conversations about stuff they like. And sometimes they'll be topical to whatever's happening in the moment. Oh, this movie just came out. Oh, this show just came out. Sometimes it's just going to be us talking about Vegeta being the more interesting character in Dragon Ball Z. And there's no reason for that other than just that's what we wanted to talk about this week. That's where our neurodivergent brains went to when we started talking about other stuff. Like that's not to like pat ourselves on the back during our own podcast about like what we wanted to be, 13 or 14 episodes in to be like, hey guys, this is what you should expect. But yeah, that's
but it's good to reassure. So like if this is the first episode someone clicks on, you know, because this could be the latest one,
sure,
and then they're like, what is this podcast about? It's always good to sometimes reiterate to people that, hey, this is what we are.
Yeah.
And if this isn't your thing, that's cool. That's fine. Oh, we're not going to appease everyone, and I'm not going to try to.
I think that's one of the best things that we had talked about when we sat down and had our like pre-podcast discussion is that like we're not trying to. We would love it if you join us on this podcast experience with us. But this is a podcast for us, by us. Like, if people jump in and enjoy it, that's awesome. But we're not here to, like, make people happy. We're not here to cater to specific audiences of this fan base or that fan base or these people versus that people. This is us hanging out on a weekly basis, and then we film it and put it on the internet.
Yeah, because and that's what I told you when we were first starting out. Because I was like, we had the idea, and I was like, what if we just do what we always did? Because we would hang out almost every week. I was like, what if we just had a camera in it? Like, we just had a camera and people would enjoy what we talk about. Because we just go off crazy shit. We just laugh and geek out.
And tangents. And honestly, guys, I wish you could hang out with us on a regular basis because there's also, like, you know, before we start recording, we'll talk about life stuff. We'll talk, you know, I don't like to think we, like, PG things up. We certainly don't. We cuss. We're explicit and everything like that. But, like, like, we'll talk about our work and be like, oh, fuck those people. Like, stuff that I'm like, I don't necessarily want that on the internet, but, you know, so, but.
I mean, if you guys wanted to hear stuff like that, then let me know, because, I mean, you might hear some Fs and more Fs about certain things about my life that you might not know. Yeah, like Zach's saying, like, we're not, like, trying to hide anything. Like, we sometimes have discussions, like, I think the longest we ever had a discussion before we even hit the record button was, like, an hour. Like, we had an hour session about something before we actually hit record.
Yeah, there was, like, a lot of life stuff happening on both ends. So, like, you were talking about your work. I was talking about my work. I was talking about, like, voiceover stuff I was trying to do. Mm-hmm. You were talking about, like, tech stuff you wanted to do.
Yep.
Then we got into like the like meat and bones of the show, which is like, for the record, for I don't know if we've ever said it out loud on this podcast. I don't do anything for this podcast. I am a producer, meaning that I come up with ideas of stuff that we might want to talk about during the episode. Yeah. Shane is the main person. Like this recording that is going up on YouTube will be edited by Shane. The audio will be edited by Shane. All the clips that go up on social media, 9 out of 10 times are Shane. Like first of all, the clips that go up are 100% Shane. Sometimes if there's like a TikTok of us doing silly stuff, it's 9 out of 10 it's Shane. Shane, this is his baby. I'm just along for the ride, and I'm happy to be in the passenger seat. I know it's like a thing, but like this he puts in all the work on this show. I show up and I talk a lot. That's my main selling point for this show. So props to Shane, because he does it all and does it with enthusiasm. He'll text me and be like, bro, I found this new thing that'll put up like an Instagram clip for us, and it has like this cool feature that like, and I'm like, I'm always like, that's so cool, dude. I always feel like I don't give you enough of a shit. Like, you'll text me something and I'll be like, that's sick, bro, and I'm like, I feel like you deserve so much more, but like, I'm just impressed when it happens.
Well, look, I never do anything to get anything out of it. I never want, I don't know if you know, to all our people that are listening to it, I never do something to get a applause or a pat on the back. I don't know. I just don't do that. I just do whatever fun, because I love you as a friend, and I enjoy our conversations. I enjoy hanging out with you. So that's why you were my first choice to be on the podcast, because you and I always have good heart-to-hearts, or we have the same wavelength of thinking, and we enjoy the same things.
It's always impressive. Our tangents kind of go together, and then at the same time, we'll be like, and back to the original. Like,
yeah. It's like, we're just, you and I are very in sync, is what you're trying to, like, essentially what I'm thinking you're saying. It's like, we're very in sync about where we want to go with things, how we want to say it. And I appreciate the shout out to me. To me personally, it's not that big of a deal, because I know you have a lot going on with in the background of your life and stuff like that. And what you do is enough for me, if that makes you feel any better. You post things about the podcast, and you come up with content ideas, which helps because, I mean, sometimes I can't come up with everything.
Look, we're 13 episodes into a podcast. Let's cards on the table. It's not hard, but there are definitely times where you're like, wow, there's just not a lot in the news happening.
There's not. And what's weird is, like, I'll look on IGN, like, in, like, the morning before we start. I'm like, let me just see if I can get
anything
one
new?
or two
anything
nuggets.
Major?
One nugget or something. And nothing's out there. And I'm like, this can't be. Like, there's got to be something. I was come on.
Well, that, and, like, we're pretty serious about the positive vibe of the podcast, of, like, keeping things in a, we can talk about, but, like, even the Johnathan Majors thing, we were like, well, I guess we have to talk about it, but let's just move to the next, like, let's just say it and then move to the next thing.
Let's just say and move on.
Because we don't want to, I mean, look, I'm not better than people who complain. In fact, I am people who complain. That's why we wanted to not do it on this podcast.
First.
That's why some of our pre-podcast episode, we're just talking to each other before we hit record, can be really long, because we'll be like, "Are you fucking kidding me with this thing?"
Yeah.
But we don't want to do that. Like, you come to. I would like to think that our conversations that stay positive are good for us. But I also like to think that people who listen to this podcast also would like to just put especially if you live in America, there's political crap every day. There's negative stories every day. There's, World War III and blah, blah, blah.
You just can't escape it. And I want to escape.
And I just want to talk about fun shit.
Yeah,
I just want to come in and be like, if I roll my sparkly dice to a D20 and it lands on 20, I get to kill a monster, and then I get lots of money for it. Like, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about video games. I want to talk about anime. I want to talk about whatever my brain feels like hitting. We had talked about, I'm going to, just because I think we're trying to wrap this one up a little sooner than usual. One of the things that I've been working on that I've been texting you about and stuff like that is I talking about D&D. It's a good themed episode for it. I have always said that I think D&D mechanics would work really good with, like, a professional wrestling tabletop game. And there is actually a pro wrestling one that you can go out and buy. It is Worldwide Wrestling. I bought it. I was reading through it. There are some things I like about it. I think there's a lot of good core mechanics in there. There are some things I don't like about it. And I was trying to figure out how I was going to, because I would like to, one of the things that we're doing with our D&D group is, as a DM, I've decided I would like to start running more short form D&D, similar to the way that Dimension 20 does it. I think Brendan Lee Mulligan is a really good person about, you can kind of compartmentalize it into a season, and then if you like it, you can circle back to it eventually. Hey, let's do season 2 of this, bring back the same characters and everything like that. So I was like, hey, the professional wrestling would be a really good short form where we do a 8 to 12 week run through of whatever, and then it ends, and then if you want to pick it back up later, you can. And so I just started working on my own. I just started writing my own. It's currently in this very moment kicking my ass. I had great. I've written out a bunch of stuff so far. I've gotten a lot of the core mechanics down, and I like them thus far. There are a couple other mechanics that I think are crucial to the experience as being professional wrestler. So, like, the cards on the table right now, I'm working on an audience score, an audience meter, meaning that if you're a good guy, they're cheering for you. If you're a bad guy, they're booing for you. And I'm deciding whether I want that to be an experience level, where it's like the more crowd reaction you get, the more experience you get, and that's how you level up. Or if I want to make that like a buff system, where it's like, if your crowd rating at the end of the night is, between a 50 and a 100 or whatever I want to lay it out as number-wise, whether those are like buffs. So if you are getting the biggest reaction of the night, you're going to get a +2, +3 to any of your charisma checks. Or, like if you're trying to lobby yourself for a world championship match, if your audience score is high enough, then you're more likely to get an approval from the general manager, aka the person running the DM, so to speak, the dungeon master, the creative person. You go to that person and like any other traditional role play, you'd say, I knock on the general manager's door and I say, I deserve a title match. Or you go out to the ring and you interrupt the champion and you say, I don't care what you're talking about. I think I deserve a title match right here, right now. And that's how you kind of play it out. If your audience score is higher, then I feel like you're more likely to get that thing. And so I have to decide whether that is a level thing, whether that is a meter thing. It's tough, but I can't wait. For the most part, because I started writing this just as like a way to tweak the original game, and then I just kept writing and kept writing and kept writing, and I was like, I'm just writing my own tabletop wrestling game right now. And like, sure, long term, it would be super cool if I could like, partner with WWE or AEW or whomever and sell them the rights to the game. And then, at that point I would tell them like, hey, I can write you like a story to go with it. And then people can just kind of play their characters from there. That would be cool and all, but as I'm designing this, I'm just saying I want to write what would be my ideal professional wrestling tabletop experience. And so I'm in what Disney calls the blue skies phase, which is whenever I come up with an idea, I just run with it as far as I can. And if it works out, if I'm like, cool, I could tie this into this and I could do this, then it stays. Right. If I start doing it and it just doesn't quite, one of the things I was considering is like, with your moves, do you have assigned moves? Can you just do whatever move you can describe? That's pretty tough for people who aren't wrestling fans to jump into if they don't know the moves.
Right.
How would you determine how much damage is done? So I was like, early on, I was like, do I want to make like a deck of cards where you can like, every time you get a new move, you add it to your deck, and then you can kind of like decide from your deck which move you want to do. I'm not against that, but it would not be that's the only mechanic. It would be kind of like spells in D&D, where it's like you have a list of spells you can do, but if you want the card to make it easier for yourself to keep track of what it does, you could have a little picture, maybe a little QR code, so you could like see what move it is.
You could even do like a moves list, like in how they have in Pokemon. Like you have a moves list of like, hey, when you get to level 10, this is what you have now, and then there's so on. So
yeah, that's definitely something I've thought about too. Is like there will be levels. The bottom level, like level 1, so to speak, is gonna be jobber, meaning that you're the guy who comes in and does the job to put the other guy over. Your job is to lose, essentially. Then it's gonna be lower mid card, or lower card, lower mid card, upper mid card, main eventer. At least that's how I've got it right now. It might change. And that's going to be, those things are going to come with different perks, different abilities, different moves, different ability scores, audience scores, stuff like that. So again, I'm still really early into crafting it. I'm trying to pull from other sources while also maintaining, I know tabletop games well enough to know the mechanics of what would work and come up with my own mechanics that I think would be good. But also that infinite freedom of I can do anything with this, it can be a little daunting too.
Not only you're a board game person, you also are a big WWE fan.
You're huge WWE fan, and AEW for the record.
You've been watching it since you were a kid.
Yep.
And you still follow it. You used to write articles for.
I did. I worked for
wrestling.
They're called dirt sheets. So it's basically a website that talks about behind the scenes news. I used to. I don't know how many people even know this about me. I used to write for, the website I would write for was WrestlingNewsWorld.com, and I went from being somebody who did like opinion pieces that would get put on a secondary website, to eventually being a person who was, well, not in any shape or form ownership. There was a transition from the top, the guy who ran the company, Richard Gray, who's an amazing guy. I loved him. He took me under my wing, or under his wing. He sold the company, he just had too much on his plate. Totally understandable. Sold the company. They kind of pointed me out as one of the like people who's consistent and has been consistent with the company for a while. I wrote for like years. I wrote the SmackDown review, and I refused to do just like a general like so-and-so beat so-and-so with a finisher. So I would literally be there as it's happening. I would be speed typing and being like, The Undertaker hits a big boot on blah, blah, blah. That person then slid out of the ring. And I consolidated down so it wasn't like, he hits him with the right hand. He hits him with another right hand. He hits him with another. It would be like he hits him. I would write it out move for move, and then during the commercial break, I would go through and trim it so that it would be like, okay, I don't need to have this. I can write a flurry of punches instead of each individual punch. I did that for years. They eventually moved me over to be the Raw reviewer, which is a 3-hour show. And then I think we ended up passing it off to somebody else because after 2 or 3 years, I was burnt of doing it.
Yeah, I remember you being so tired.
Because you have to do it live in the moment. You have to keep refreshing it. But also, like, at the time, we had a really good audience. Like, a lot of wrestling fans would come into our comment section, and they would talk about what was happening at the same time. So I would be updating the stuff. Some people who couldn't watch it would be going off of my updates. Some people would just be watching it and commenting what was happening at the time. So it was a really great interactive social, thing. But then when it switched ownerships, a lot of our people kind of left. We had like a split off within the company of like half the people went and started their own website. I stayed with the original website, but a lot of our fans followed the other people, which is fine. But yeah, I worked for them for, no joke, probably 7 years. From the time I was probably 18 or 19 until WrestleMania 35, which was 4 or 5 years ago. So it was probably 2016-17 that I stopped doing it. And I
went to my ever first wrestling match with you.
That's right. You went to SmackDown.
Yeah.
We went to SmackDown in DC. Yeah. I went to an AEW show, I think 6 or 7 months ago, and it was at UMBC Arena, so it was like smaller, which is nice because it felt more intimate. But the last WWE show I've been to was WrestleMania 35, and it was a good one. I remember being there. The website had helped pay for it, which was really cool. It was in New York, so I just drove myself up there. And I remember it was such a good show. It was like the longest WrestleMania. It was the last one they did before they split it into 2 nights. Now they do Saturday and Sunday. I was like, this is such a good WrestleMania, and I know they're going to ruin it tomorrow. They're going to do something. They're going to start a new storyline, or they're going to do something, and it's just going to be bad. And it's just, and so I took a break. I stopped watching that night. I was like, cool. This is what a good Jordan to go out on. I took a long break, and recently, with the storytelling changing, Vince McMahon had left WWE, and so creative had gotten a lot better. It just got so repetitive and so to the point where like something would happen 1 week, and then 2 weeks later they would do something completely contradictory to that, and you'd be like, well, I guess now he's a bad guy, and then 2 weeks later they would switch him back to being a good guy because they'd forgotten that they made him a bad guy, and it got so inconsistent, and it was like insulting as a fan to be like, you're not even trying to entertain me at this point. That I stopped. I did keep up with AEW because they were more wrestling based, but I was just very burnt on wrestling. And then within the last year or so, the Bloodline storyline, to be perfectly honest, if you're a wrestling fan, it's the Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, the Usos storyline that's currently going and is probably going to wrap up around WrestleMania this year, which is in 8 days, or 7 days at this point. It brought me back, and I don't watch full time anymore. I tend to watch clips, and if something good happens, then I'll go back and watch it. But I'm finding my way back to it, and this tabletop RPG that I'm working on is one of the things that I think has been inspired by good wrestling in the Bloodline storyline and everything like that. It kind of re-sparked that in me, and I'm kind of combining 2 of my passions, which is tabletop games / board games and professional wrestling, which I know very, very intimately. It's funny because I'll talk to Bryn and I'll mention something and she'll be like, I don't know what that means, right? And I was like, oh, really? Like, I talk about it pretty consistently. Like, it's a language that I just speak now. And it's weird to me when people don't speak the language because it's just 25 years of integration into my brain.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to have like a little prototype session. I want to test it out, and I wouldn't mind being a villain.
Yeah, there's going to be there will be several test sessions probably coming up in the next couple months that I just kind of it won't be like a full time like we're going to do a campaign. It'll be like we need to see if this match mechanic works, or I need to make sure that everything flows smoothly, or like, hey, let's test out the mechanics to make sure that nothing's too broken, that you don't just end up spamming the same button over and over, so to speak. So I'll recruit you into a couple because it'll just be like a day thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I remember when you tell me the first, we actually had this discussion off camera about it, and I thought it was so cool. I thought it was a very, very unique idea, and I was like, you definitely have to finish this, like create this game. It'd be so fun. So, but I think we can end it there, man.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's do the wrap up stuff. Make sure to follow us, Roll4NerdyCheck with 4, Roll4NerdyCheck, on the social medias, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the TikToks, the YouTubes. If you want to look at our beautiful faces and watch watch the podcast rather than listen to the podcast. But if you'd like to listen to the podcast, you can catch it anywhere where you can listen to podcasts: Spotify, iHeartRadio, the huge. And then outro. May all your nerdy checks roll high, friends. And then point.
Yes. As always, stay nerdy, my friends, and be on the lookout for Roll4NerdyCheck Gaming. I've been playing a little bit of Call of Duty. The next episode, this Thursday, will be I play a little bit of Call of Duty online with my cousin. So you get to hear some interesting commentary between both of us.
Oh, I'm sure it's interesting.
But again, as always, stay nerdy, my friends, and may all your nerdy checks roll high.
I think you took my line.
I did.